Hello everyone and welcome to Intellipaat. This video is going to be about Linux training part 1. Now let us take a look at the agenda for this video. Firstly, I'll be explaining about text editors and creating files. Later, there will be a brief understanding of the file permissions within Linux. And later there will be a hands-on which includes users, groups and file permissions. But before we begin, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell icon for regular updates.
Welcome to the text editors and creating a file session in the Linux course. So now let's get started with this. So first we'll look at various text editors. Vim. First we'll look at Vim. Vim is one of the most commonly used text editors and one of the most popular text editors. So Vim is actually lightweight and there are a lot of benefits. We'll look at that later. So Vim is one of the most popular text editors, then Emacs, and then GNU Nano. So I quite often use Nano. I don't use Vim that much. I like Nano better than Vim. And there is gedit. So even gedit is a quite popular text editor, which is basically a GUI text editor. Vim, Nano, or the command line text editors where you can type in the terminal itself. So now looking at these, we'll look at the most popular text editors. Vim and Emacs are the most popular text editors used. So this is basically based on personal opinion. You might prefer a particular text editor for its usability. So I use Nano because it's pretty easy to create, save and close the files, and it's pretty easy to type in files also. So in Vim, again, you'll have to look at the functionality, you'll have to work with it. If you're fine with it, then you can go ahead with Vim. If not, you can try Emacs as well. So these are the two most popular text editors. Now this is how Vim will look. So Vim basically is a command line tool, as I told you, and you can see that it just opens a window where it is the command in the command line itself, and it shows some things. So first, to start off typing, you will have to enter I, which is insert, then you can start typing. And then coming to Emacs, you'll have to install Emacs, and when you open Emacs, it will be opened as an application. So Emacs is not a command line tool, it is an application. So again, these two are the most popular, but still people use Nano, gedit, and still there are a lot of text editors. People use all of these text editors to, if it is comfortable for them. So next, we'll look at some things about Vim. So Vim stands for an improvised version of the VI text editor. So basically Vim is VI improved, that's it. So VI improved is Vim. It's the improvised version of the VI text editor, which was commonly available in a lot of, not even in a lot of, in every Linux distribution which is available. So right now, why is Vim popular? So first, it's lightweight. It's easy to open, it's easy to work with it, and it does not take a lot of space. Second, it's very easy to open and edit a file, as I told you. Third, if you boot a Linux system, Vim is most possibly installed. That's what I was telling you. Because Vim is one of the most common text editors, so that in most of the Linux distributions, so even we've installed CentOS, I'm pretty sure in CentOS Vim will already be installed. So in most of the Linux distributions, Vim will already be installed in it, so that you don't need to go ahead and install it once again and start using it. So that's why Vim is popular. So moving ahead, these are the Vim modes. First is the command mode. In the command mode, you will not be able to type, but you'll be able to enter commands. So you can see we can enter commands for copy, paste, delete or replace. And then in the insert mode, once you press I in the command mode, your command mode will be shifted to insert mode. Then you can start typing in, and then once it's done, you can just press the escape key, which will come out of the insert mode. And then command line mode, this is also a command mode. So again, this is command mode, but every command you provide should start with a colon. So to quit, it's colon Q. To save and quit, it's colon WQ. So this is what happens. And fourth is visual mode. Visually select text and run commands on selected sections. To shift from command to visual type, you will have to press V. So once you press V, you can visually select and edit things like that. So these are the four different Vim modes. So you'll have to remember this. So now let's create a file. So just first let us look at the PPT, then go ahead to our Linux machine and start working with it. So I've created a file and pressed I and entered some text as hello world, and then pressed escape, and you can see in the bottom corner colon WQ and hit enter. So the file would have got saved. So these are some options inside the Vim command mode. I is for inserting, capital O is insert text on the previous line. Small o is insert text on the next line. A is append text after the cursor. Capital A is append text at the end of the line. So these are some options. There are still many options. You can see here creating and saving a file. So first let us go to the Linux machine. So this is my machine. So I've opened it. Next I'll have to open the terminal, and so I'll make this bigger. Yes. So right now if I type in Vim, so you can see Vim is already installed in my system. Vim vi improved, so that's what it's showing. Vim is already installed. So now I'll get back. So :q, I got back. So Emacs, I think Emacs will not be installed. Yeah, Emacs is not installed. And then Nano, so Nano is installed. And I mostly prefer Nano because it's pretty easy for me, because mostly I'm not going to edit anything. I'll be typing in and then I'll save it and close it off. So Nano, it's pretty simple. It's just 3 different controls you'll have to remember to navigate. Vim has a lot of commands, a lot of different modes. You'll have to remember all that to work with it. So first we'll create a file with Vim. So to create a file with Vim, first enter Vim and then enter the file name. So let's say 1.txt. So I have created the file, but so now I'll not be able to. So now you can see I'm able to type in, but you can see there is nothing over here. So I'm going to press I and you can see the insert word over there. So this means I'm in the insert mode. So in the insert mode, I will be able to type. So once I hit escape, now I'll not be able to type. I'll be given here. So if I hit Q, what will happen is it will just quit. It won't save the file. But if I hit WQ, it basically means write and quit. It will save and then quit. So done. So now if you open the file once again, now you can see it is created and saved. Now let's hit V. Now it's visual mode. So in visual mode again, you should learn some things, and see I'm selecting everything and I'm able to change it accordingly. So basically visual mode is to select, so let's say select a particular text or select a particular line and then use that line. On that line you can change it, but in insert mode basically you cannot do that in insert mode. So you can see I'm trying to do that exact same thing, so you cannot do that, but in visual mode you can do that. So you can see I can do that in visual mode but not in insert mode. So now I'm saving it once again. So if I do a cat of 1.txt, so this is the latest saved ones. So going back to the PPT, so we've done the first part. We saw the various text editors, and we also saw what is Vim and how to create a file and save it in Vim. So these are some other options. We also saw the visual mode and the command mode. Command mode does not show the name command over there, but you can type in commands like what I did, :q, :wq, all those commands you can type in. We'll be understanding file permissions. So first, ownership of Linux file. So when you create a file, basically in a Linux system, you have 3 types of owners. One is the user, which right now in my Linux system, it's Intellipaat. Intellipaat, it's a user. And then there is groups. Groups are basically, you can create a group and add in some users and give them some permissions, so that give that group some permissions, so all that users will have only those permissions. And then finally, others and processes. So processes in the sense, when a process is running, that process might require a particular resource to work on a particular file to use for that particular process. So that process should be given permission to use that particular file. So these are the 3 different types of owners. So you can see the purpose of users and groups are for access and permissions. So let's say if there are no users and groups, then anyone can log into your system and anyone can use any file, access any file. Even if you're the owner, like if I'm the owner of a file, you can log into the system and you can change the contents of that file, which is not good for me because it's my file and I want that content. So for that you have users and groups. So if my user logs in and creates that file, only my user will be given owner permissions. Only I can edit that file and you cannot edit it because you're a different user. Now every user has their own directory. Every user have their own directory, usually with /home/username. So under /home, you will have a directory with your username. In our particular virtual machine, you saw that /home/Intellipaat. Intellipaat is the user which we created. So basically, this particular user has a directory under their name. And then even processes need permission to access specific files and locations. Yes, so while some process is running, obviously that process will have the permission to use a particular file or log into or go into a particular location and access a file. So these are the three different types of owners. Now, what is the difference between a user and a group? So first, user, owner of the file. And then, so these are not the differences. These are basically the characteristics of users and groups. So first, let us see the users. So users, again, the owner of the file. And then system uses user IDs to manage users. So let's say there are 100 different users and in that 10 people have the same name. So the system will not understand that if all of them have the same name, it will think they're all the same user. So to differentiate between the users, the system has its own identity. So system has its own identity scheme which uses user IDs. So every user will have their own unique user ID. Whenever that particular user is working on the system will check for the user ID and it will know who exactly is working on the system right now. And then the system identifies daemon processes as users. So daemon processes are background processes, and system will assume that a background process is running because a user has induced it. Because mostly it is the user who is inducing it. Only if user switches on to the system, only then those background processes will start to run. So now groups. Groups contains 2 or more users. So all users in the group have same permissions as given to the group. So let's say you've created a group, or let's now not assume group. So let's say now you have 10 users. In that 5 users are database admins. Now all of the database admins need the same kind of permissions. So instead of providing every single user the same permissions, you can create a group, add these 5 users to that particular group and give that group those permissions. So once you give that group that permissions, it will be applied to all the users under that particular group. So that is why groups are used. And then finally, groups are identified by GID. Like how users are identified by user IDs, groups are identified by group IDs. Now, authors and processes. A process can open a file and even read or write in a file. Yeah, it can, if provided with enough permissions. And if a process is using a file and we delete it, it does not get deleted. So what does this sentence exactly means? Let me explain it to you. So while a process is running and it is using a particular file, so while that process is running, you're basically deleting that file. You would see that that file is not available in the system, but the file will not be deleted. It will be just deleted blatantly from the top, but from the memory it will not be erased. Only when the process is complete and the result is successful, or if it is failed, only when the process is complete, that particular file will be deleted from the memory. Because if you delete that file while that process is happening and you stop that process, that is not beneficial for the process as well as the user. So this is what happens while a process is using a file. And finally, there are 3 types of user IDs: effective user IDs, real user IDs, and saved user IDs. So we look at these user IDs in detail. Okay. So first, effective UID. So an effective UID and a real user UID is basically the same once you log into the system, because Intellipaat, the user which I created, and the root are the same person, and the UID will be the same because I'm logged into the same system and I'm using both the super user privileges and the normal user privileges. That is super user in the sense when I use sudo su or sudo -s to become the root. And in most of the time while you're running a process, effective UID is used. So effective UID in the sense your normal UID of the user. So the system will understand which user is exactly trying to access this particular process, or which user is attempting this process using the effective UID. And the real user UID comes into play only when you're shifting the user from your normal user to the root user. So while you're doing that, it will check for the UID. It will check for whether the effective UID and the real user UID is the same or not. If it is the same, then it will accept and move ahead, because sometimes using the normally without super user privileges, when you're trying to execute something, it might fail and ask for the it might say it does not allow because super user privileges are not provided. But once you use sudo in front of it and provide the password for it, it will work. So how this basically works is, while you're normally using it, it will take the effective UID and it will assume you do not have those permissions. But once you provided sudo and the password, it will assume that you are root, and even though you are root, you will have the same UID because you're just shifting from the normal user to the root user. And finally, saved user UID is basically once the system knows it's the same user, and then it will be automatically saved, and then once you hit sudo su and the password, it will automatically change the user privileges. So that's what saved user UID is. The first time it might ask you that are you the same user, please enter the password. But once you've done that, after that it will not ask, it will directly ask for the password and you can move ahead. So these are processes. Moving ahead, now let's create a user and groups so that we can understand better. So let me open my system. So first let me log into it, and okay, so right now internet is not connected. I don't know why I need internet, but still I'll connect it. Okay, so first you can see this, and so this is the user which I'm logged in right now, and you can see this W, it's the same thing. And clear this. Okay, so right now I'm logged in as Intellipaat. So there is currently only one user, because going back under home there is only one particular user, which is Intellipaat, because we've not created any other user. So now what we are going to do is we are going to create another user to accompany Intellipaat. So let's create Intellipaat number 2, Intellipaat 2, and to create that user, it's pretty simple. It's sudo user add username. So let's go back to the terminal, sudo user add and username Intellipaat 2, and enter the administrator password. Now it is done. So now if you go back to home, now you can see there are two different folders, Intellipaat and Intellipaat 2, because you have created a new user. So we've created another user right now, and that's fine. Now let me enter into Intellipaat 2. So permission denied. So let me do a sudo, and I'm still not able to enter into it. I think we'll have to log in before trying to enter it. Okay, that's fine. So right now our second step was to create a group. So again, it's the same process to create a group. Sudo group add and group name. I'm going to name it as group 1. So I've created a group. So you can already see there is a group called Intellipaat and there is a group called Wheel, and we have created a group right now. So one more thing. So right now let's try to do something. Let's try with file permissions. We have created a user and a group. This is how we create. So I just wanted to show that first. Now let's try one thing. Now going back, so first let's try to cat/etc/shadow. So permission has been denied. So going to our PPT, you can see here it won't work. But right now with a sudo cat etc/shadow, so now you can see it has displayed all the contents under it. So why I wanted to show is this is where permissions come in. So you might be thinking how it happens with sudo, because I've done this a lot. Sometimes I do it normally, permission will be denied, but then I'll use sudo and enter the password, then it will work. You might be wondering why it is, but basically it is just permissions. Normally a user will not have permissions to view the contents of an etc shadow folder, but a super user or a root user will have the privileges to see that. So that's what happened over there. So now one more thing is how to get super user privileges. It's pretty simple. Hit sudo and su, or so you can see now it's not asking for the password. So exit, or you can do sudo -s. So both are the same. Sudo su and sudo -s are the same. So now we are logged in as the root user. So now let us try. So now you can see I'm able to enter the folder Intellipaat 2. But as the user Intellipaat, I did not have permissions to enter Intellipaat 2 because it is a different user, and that user has not provided me permissions to access his folder. Okay, now I'm the root user. So now you can see I can just type in cat etc shadow and I will be provided with the result. Yeah, you can see this. So I'm provided with the result. So why I am provided with the result is because I am the root user, I am the super user, and I have the privileges and permissions to do this. So let me clear this and let's go back to the slides. So this is how it works. Now coming down. So now root. Let's look at the root. And it is the directory at the top of the hierarchy. So we have a file system hierarchy in Linux, and root is the top of the hierarchy because root is the first directory. Under root there are everything else. In a Linux system, root is the main directory. Under root there are so many directories which are for so many different operations, but root is the main directory which is at the top of the hierarchy. So it then has a root like structure and under it containing multiple directories and files. So it is the ground level. Root is the ground level, and under root there are so many different branches going under which forms different file structures. So that is how it got the name root, and this is the symbol of root. A backslash is the symbol of root. Coming down, so guys, this is how the file structure will be. So you can see this is a top folder root, and under root you will see all of these major folders. You can see all these major folders over here. So bin, etc, sbin, usr, var, dev, home, lib, mnt, opt, proc, and root. So first let us look at the folder called sudoverse. So this particular folder sudoverse will have the information of which users have the super user privileges. So basically we cannot look into /etc/sudoverse. So if you are a super user, basically you can do. So once you have looked into it, let's say you have 10 different users and only in that 2 users have super user permissions, and you want to provide super user privileges to a third person. So using vi sudo, you can basically change those permissions. So right now let's open our virtual machine and check who has the super user privileges. Okay, so right now we are in root. Let me exit it. So yeah, so I'm going back. Okay, right now we can check that. So now let's do a cat. So I don't have permissions. etc sudoverse, and now you can see all the contents of it. Going up, let us look at the user. So all of these are basically comments. So you can see there is a group wheel and allows people in group wheel to run all commands, and then there is users, there is other users. So basically under this currently there are no defaults. There are some defaults you can see here: colors, display, hostname, mail, ps1, ps2, username, lang, but there is no particular information about the sudoers, that is who can sudo and who cannot, who has super privileges and who doesn't. So for that we'll have to look more into this. So coming down, let me hit vi sudo /etc/sudoers nano/etc/sudoers, and now I'm inside the file. You can see these are all comments. Everything is a comment here. See, drivers is commented, defaults visible, pw path, always set home, match group by group id. So these are some default options provided here. Adding home to the environment variable, secure the path. So you can see here root all equal to all, or basically this means the root user has permissions to run every single command. So even when I created Intellipaat is again a user with all permissions, so we don't need to do anything else. So under Intellipaat you'll just have to type in sudo su and become the super user. Once you become the super user, you have again all the root privileges. So this is the sudoverse file. Now going back to the slides. So we saw the sudoverse file where we saw root has all the permissions to execute every single command. In that particular place, you can edit it like let's say I've provided Intellipaat 2 and I've provided all equal to all. So basically I've provided every single command permissions to Intellipaat 2 user. So that's how you can use /etc/sudoverse. Now file permissions. So let's get back. So you see this example first. So I'm doing an ls-l and it's showing the files and documents, the files and directories under my home folder, and you can see this particular part. So that's what I'm highlighting here. These are the permissions. Now going back, let us do an lsl. So now you can see these are the files, these are the documents. Sorry, again I'm repeat. So now you can see these are the files and these are the directories. So how you can understand that these are directories and these are not? So not just with the color coding, you can see this D in front of directories, right? So that is one particular thing which you can see whether this particular desktop is a file or a directory. If there is D in front of this part, then it is a directory. If it is empty, then it is a file. So right now, coming to permissions. So these are permissions. We'll be looking into these right now. So I think you've got an idea of how it looks. Now going back to the slides. So yeah, so now you have 4 different paths in a file permission. The first part is the file type. If it is a hyphen, if it is a dash, then it is a file, a normal file. It can be any different file with any different extension, but it is a file. But if there is a D in front of it, basically it is a directory. It is not a file, it is a directory or a folder under which you can create multiple files or other directories. So that is the first option. The second option is user permissions, third is group permissions, and fourth is other permissions. So user permissions, again I told you there are 3 different types in permissions itself, in ownerships itself. The first type is user, second is group, third is other. So now we'll be looking at RWX as well. So first, user permissions is this particular part, the first part, going back to the control. So you can see file type, user permissions, RWX, these are the user permissions, and again RWX, these are the group permissions, again the RWX, this is the other permissions for processes. So now again going back to the slides. So this is the way it looks. This is the format of a file permission. Now coming down, what are the meanings of these characters? First R means readable, W means writable, X means executable, and dash or hyphen means empty. There is no permission or there is nothing over there. So first R, in the sense it's readable. So first you saw here RWX under user permissions. This means a user, that particular user or any user can read, write and execute this file. And then there is W, so you've seen this. Next there was group permissions R minus X. So let's say this particular file can be read as well as can be executed by users in any group, but they'll not be able to write into that file. Only this particular user can write into that file. None of the other users inside any other groups can write into that file. They can only read it or execute it. And again, last one is other permissions. A process can either read it or execute it, but it cannot write inside it. But if it also has a RWX, other permissions, that particular process can also write inside this file or directory. So this is the meanings of these characters. Now coming down, hands-on, users, groups and file permissions. So we've created users and groups, and as well as we saw about file permissions, but we'll look more into them. So now let's get back. Let's get back and do some operations here. So first let's check whether, so you can see Intellipaat and Wheeler, but for more information about groups, you'll have to go to the folder etc. So under etc you have group file here, and you should also have you should have a file about users as well. I think it's login.defs. Yeah, it's login.defs. So let's do a cat for both. First login.defs. No, so basically login.defs shows you the basic information. So coming down, let me explain you what exactly is login.defs. So you see UID min and UID max. So these are for users who get created, and these are the ID values for those users. So let's say I'm creating 1000 users, then the first user will start from the number 1000. Just assuming first user will start from number 1000, 1001, 1002 up till 1999. So the value starts at 1000 and the maximum value can go up to 60,000. So you can create these many users and the user ID range is from 1000 to 60,000, not from 0 to 60,000. And for the system accounts, the value is 201 to 999. And again, coming back to group, even for group it's 1000 to 60,000, and system accounts it's 201 and to 999. So yeah, so this is one thing. And another thing is cat group. So you can see in the last demo, I think I created group 1, and you can see group 1 over here, and this is group 1's user ID. So now how can you find out whether a particular group is a user created group or system created group? So just look at, so this was the user which I created, first user which I created, and look at the group ID. It's 1000, and this is the second user, 1001. This is the third group, which is 1002. So as I told you, it starts from 1000 and then 1001, 1002, and it goes ahead. And you can see here everything else. So coming down, so all of these 996, 995, 994, all of these groups are basically system groups, and we don't need to do anything about them. This is what I wanted to show. Even wheel, under wheel there is Intellipaat alone, the administrator or the root user, but these are the latest created groups. This VBox SF was basically the additions which we made, the guest additions to make the screen bigger. So right now Intellipaat and group 1 is available. So we've seen that. Now going back to my home folder. Okay, so now let's create another user, Intellipaat 3, and let's add a comment to that particular user. So this sudo user add Intellipaat 3, and before this I'm going to use the -c option. So the -c option, after -c option, you can basically enter a message. So you can basically enter a message, and that will also be stored in the etc folder. So right now I'm just going to add a message here. See the third user and create. So I've created the user. So yes, I've created this user. Now how to check whether this particular message has been added? So one thing you can do is you can basically check in the /etc/password folder. So now let us do a grep over there. Grep Intellipaat 3 /etc/password, and you can see it over here, Intellipaat 3 and X, and you can see the ID, user ID, which is 1002, and then the third user, you can see the message added over here, and the path is home/Intellipaat 3 and bin/bash. A shell is also created for this user. So this is how you interactively create a user, and again you can do the same things for creating a group as well. So we already added a group called group 1, so that's what I was doing. So let's see it once again. Let's grab group 1 from etc/group, and you can see grp1 1002, which is basically its group ID. So now let's remove this group. So to remove the group, it's group del, sudo group del, and group name. So it's done. So now you cannot see any output because that group has been deleted, and this is how you delete a group. So now let's create a group and add multiple users to it. So sudo add group. I'm going to name it as group 2. Sorry, it is group add, not add group, group add. So I've created the group. So now sudo g password and then add Intellipaat 3. So yeah, I've done a small mistake. That is, it is sudo g password -a is for adding users. I've provided the username, and then we'll have to provide the group name as well, which is group 2. So adding user Intellipaat 3 to group 2. So it's done. So one more thing you can do is you can add multiple users as well. So Intellipaat and Intellipaat. Okay, so it is taking them as a single user. Okay, sorry. Again, one more mistake I've done is that to basically add a single user, it's -a. To add multiple users is -m, and then it's normally like this. So now again it's added. So Intellipaat is added, Intellipaat 2 is added, Intellipaat 3 is added to the same group. So this is what I wanted to show you: creating groups, deleting groups, adding users. So you can do that. And then one more thing, g password. So you can see the options over here. You can use -r to delete the group's password, and you can basically use -d to remove a user from the group. So now let's do that. Sudo g password -d, and I'm going to remove Intellipaat from group 2. So removing Intellipaat from group 2, and it's done. So now we've removed a user, added 2 users. Now let us check who are in this group. So to check that, do a grep of the group name inside the etc group folder. So you can see Intellipaat 2 is the user which is added to this particular group, and let us check group 1, and group 1 is not available. Let us check Intellipaat, and under Intellipaat you can see Intellipaat is added to wheel. There is a user called Intellipaat, there's a group called Intellipaat, Intellipaat 2, Intellipaat 3, and Intellipaat 2 user is also added to a group called group 2 which we just created. So now again it's very simple to delete a group. It's sudo group del group name, and it will get deleted. Now if I do a grep of that group name in the etc group file, so now you cannot see anything, so because that group is not available. So guys, thank you for this particular session. Meet you in the next session.
Just a quick info, guys. Intellipaat provides Linux administration online training mentored by industry experts, the course link of which is given in the description below. Now, let's continue with the session.